This episode is brought to you by Pella Northland. For 19 and a half years, I've been building homes, and 95% of all of my homes have used Pella windows. I couldn't be happier to call them a partner in our builds and our remodels. Whether you're an architect, a designer, or a remodeler, I'd highly recommend Pella windows. They can fit old homes, new homes, reclaimed, commercial, and really everything in between. Pella is a company that we trust and that we recommend to our clients. Additionally, in management, Peter and Ed have just been absolute fantastic people to work with, as well as mentors to me personally. So when it comes time to look for a window, I'd highly recommend Pella Windows. Find more at pellanorthland.com. Also, if you're interested, you can hear episode 1 where I interview Peter and Ed together for a great listen on business and Pella Windows.
When you're in a corporate setting, you have to be, I don't want to say careful about things, but you kind of do. So when I was a director of engineering, for example, we got purchased by a really big, more corporate company. And, I had told them I want to be CEO when my boss retires. Like that was what I wanted to do. So then they found out like I ride motorcycles, I shoot guns, things like that. They even actually told me, well, you got a speeding ticket the other day, maybe you should get rid of your motorcycles. And knowing like the way I am, what I did was I went out and bought another motorcycle and I was like, look at my new motorcycle.
That's awesome.
So needless to say, I didn't become CEO either.
Welcome to the Curious Builder Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today I'm joined by Dian Mullis with Pro Concrete Countertops. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You came in hot on your motorcycle. I remember because the first time I met you, actually the only time I've ever met you, you've always been riding your cycle, even on the shoulder seasons of Minnesota. So tell us a little bit about your motorcycle riding. You clearly have a passion for it.
I've had a motorcycle for a very long time. I had 2 dirt bikes when I was like 5. I think my grandparents bought us dirt bikes. And yeah, so I have 2 kids. When my kids were like in car seat age, right? I lived in like a suburb and I'm driving a minivan. I got 2 kids. I'm listening to like kid music. And I was like, I need a motorcycle again. Like this is not working.
Most people do the opposite. They have kids and are like, oh man, and usually it's the husband. I have to sell my motorcycle, which was what happened to me. Once I got married, I sold my motorcycle. You had the exact opposite. That's amazing.
Yes, because you just have to get back to yourself sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. What do you ride? What do you ride?
It's a Ninja H2. It is a supercharged 1000.
Oh my.
It has absolutely ruined me for motorcycles. Like you cannot get a faster bike. I love it. Love it.
Have you ever laid it down?
Because I'm clumsy. Yes.
Okay. But while riding or just
while sitting on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I dropped my gloves and went to grab them and just got a little bit too far over, just enough for me to go.
I did. It's funny because they always, and I'm not going to pretend to be an amazing cyclist, cyclist I am, but motorcycler is I tipped mine over at a stop sign. The classic thing, right? I had a 1200 Buell for touring, and I was in St. Louis Park at the post office. I hate riding in the city, especially when you're first starting. I think it's like a couple months into it. And I pull up. I just got a little top heavy and I just went, oh, and it started to go and I couldn't grab it. I just looked like a total idiot. And it's like, okay, but I would rather do that than, wiping out on a on-ramp on some sand or something.
Oh, yeah.
Because everyone always says it's only a matter of time before you lay it down. And anyway, my wife is she works in the medical field. So she's like, it's time for that to go.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Well, thanks for coming. You reached out to me maybe a year ago. And you had expressed interest in coming on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And then I had recommended, I think we were kind of full at the time, come to one of our live events. I think at this point you've been to at least 2, maybe 3 of our live events.
I think 2.
So you've been to Jackson's as well as Welch, the one in the fall.
Yes.
So thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about Pro Concrete Countertops, and let's talk a little bit about your history to ownership. Maybe we'll start there. And I have a ton of questions as I was looking at your website, which, by the way, is probably one of the more beautiful websites that I've seen. And I really like good websites. Maybe we'll start there. How long ago have you refreshed or rebranded? Because it looks really crisp.
So Creative Endeavor, Greta, she is also on the Wink board. She made my website. very recently, last November, October, I think we
Okay.
went live.
Okay.
Yes,
So it's recent because I can tell. I'm
It's
like,
very
ooh,
recent.
this is a hot design. I like it.
Like I gave her, there's so much information, and to organize all of it so that it makes sense is she does an amazing job. I recommend her very highly. So I'm really glad you looked at the website, because I do know you do usually look at, whoever's coming on.
Yep.
You talk about the website. So I was hoping that you would look at.
Well, it's funny because while I've met you a number of times in person, I can't say we've had like long, deep dialogues, which is half the reason I like the podcast, is I actually get to know people on a much deeper level. But as I was doing some research, like I do before every episode, like your website was great and it really highlights your products, which we're going to spend most of the time talking about the business operations. But I was trying to find, I always like to know a little bit about the person, right? And like, it's a very I was like very zero, like you have like, wait, did the NSA wipe out her background? Is she like a deep cover spy from Australia? And it was like, because you kind of look Australian. And I was like, man, where in the world? I can't find anything out about you. So I'm very intrigued to I don't know much about your personal life because it's not on the website. It's not really much on LinkedIn. And so those are usually my two go-to places to kind of dig in. So
it's very interesting you said that. So I am working with Morgan from Neon Lion.
Yeah.
I had like a powwow session. I'm not really sure what you call it. But they are helping me with marketing. That was one of their things too. You don't have anything that was like, you need to put something about you. And Greta and David from Creative Endeavor, when they were, working on my website, they're like, you need to have an about. And I was like, no, I don't. I don't want anything about me. I want my products to speak for themselves. I don't I understand, even this podcast, it's about the story and things like that. But when I go to buy something, I want to buy it because it's something good. It's, something that I want. I don't usually buy for the story. And so I'm different probably like that, but I just don't. So I'm, Morgan's probably convincing me maybe I do need an about on my website. And I've just been trying to balance that in my mind, should I do it or not? And so.
I mean, I feel like we live in a really interesting age in the sense that you can, I love, I would say whatever you do, just be authentic to yourself. If that's your value proposition, stay with it with a little bit of seasoning, right? Listen to Morgan and the Neon Lion to know her brother, but you're going to want a little personal. But to your point, when you're buying countertops, whether it's Diane or somebody else, you really want just bomber countertops that are sweet design. Totally understand that. It's funny though, because people really resonate with a story and people really resonate with a relationship, but everyone has a different value proposition. And maybe it'd be interesting I'm not smart enough to know the answer to this, but I think different industries and different services and different products, it probably would be, some are more of a transaction and some would probably be more of a relationship. And not that each industry can't be both to their level, but and I can only comment on the building world because that's kind of the one I'm in. It's someone said this great line the other day when they were being interviewed to be a remodeler. They said that interviewing a remodeler is like interviewing someone you want to be a roommate for a year and a half, basically interviewing a roommate, right?
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's why we don't see so many personas and people, especially on builder platforms, because we realize that, we still have to build gorgeous homes. And we do want to highlight that. Mm-hmm. And maybe for myself, maybe I've gone overboard and I've done too much highlighting of myself. That's something for me to self-reflect on at a later date at a different podcast. But it's just interesting to watch how people market. Because I know some builders that do nothing but show their homes. They want nothing to do with themselves. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so just hearing you talk about it, I sort of can resonate with what you're saying.
I think it also comes from my corporate background a little bit. Because when you're in a corporate setting, you have to be, I don't want to say careful about things, but you kind of do. So when I was a director of engineering, for example, I worked well with the CEO because he was my boss. But we got purchased by a really big, more corporate company. And, I had told them I want to be CEO when my boss retires. That was what I wanted to do. And so then they found out I ride motorcycles, I shoot guns, things like that. They even actually told me, well, you know, you got a speeding ticket the other day, you know, maybe you should get rid of your motorcycles. And knowing like the way I am, what I did was I went out and bought another motorcycle, and I was like, look at my new motorcycle.
That's awesome.
So needless to say, I didn't become CEO either.
It's really the problem becomes when you're riding motorcycles and shooting guns at the same time. That intersection becomes kind of a dangerous PR stunt unless you're working for Evel Knievel Enterprises.
Right. So that's why I'm a little more careful about kind of like my background, because and anytime like, I mean, I had 21 people that worked for me, you know, when I was a director. So I always try to keep like my personal life out of it as well. Like I didn't ever go out to lunch with, you know, certain people. Well, I didn't go out to lunch with anyone that worked with me unless we were in a group setting, you know, as a group. You know, everything was very like I had a very, you know, drawn line. So I think that also makes a difference for me on how much is on my website about me, you know. So
it's interesting, and it makes total sense when you give up that background like that. Walk us through. So you were director of engineering. Let's go back. At what point and how long were you that before you decided you wanted to? Because you didn't start Pro Concrete, you bought it as a business.
No, I started it myself.
Oh, you started as well. So why concrete? How did you get? What were you doing at scale for this? You know, as you were director of engineering, walk us through a little bit of that, and then let's walk through how and when the process of starting Pro Concrete, how it became.
Sure. So I have 2 kids. I have 2 girls. My oldest daughter is in a wheelchair. So, and my first husband was a framer. He's the one who convinced me, let's build our own house. So we built our own house. We framed it. We generaled everything. I did more of the generaling than he did. And then we split up. I have 2 girls, like I said. And once I knew our oldest daughter was in a wheelchair, then it was like, okay, I like to design everything around her, because honestly, accessibility, unless you live with it, you don't really know what the needs are. So I built my second house, super accessible, built my third house, and that's the one that I live in now. So I did my own concrete countertops in that house. So I was like, I really love the trades. I love working with my hands. I don't want to be a builder. It just
Smart
wasn't me.
choice, by the way. You already built 3 homes. You're like, wait, I know enough to know don't be a builder.
I just didn't want to be a builder.
Yeah.
Especially on my third house. So my third house, like this one now, was just when the building industry was starting to go back up. So it was like 2014. And it was really hard to find any contractors at that time, especially ones who wanted to work for a homeowner who was generaling their house, you know.
That's always a red flag. You're either going to get the price that you don't want to pay, or you're just like, do I really want this guy in my home?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a little tough. So yeah, I did my own concrete countertops in my house, and I just knew, like, I knew about glass fiber reinforced concrete, but I didn't have the mix. So I went to a class in 2019, the Concrete Countertop Institute class. But actually before that, so I was working as a director. I'm like, I love concrete. Maybe eventually someday I'll do this as a business. So that was like when I get, you know, money, when I get enough money to like start my own business, that's what I'll do. But it was like 5-6 years, you know, like a long.
What was your career before? What company?
When it was automated packaging. That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I loved what I did. Like I traveled all over. I traveled to like Europe, constantly busy. And it was just like, I loved it. So then, yeah, I was like, okay, my main goal was basically, I'm going to make concrete slabs and I'm going to sell them to like stone fabricators. That was my like vision, so to speak. And so then when I lost my job, after I told them I wanted to be CEO and all that. Yeah.
Bought a second motorcycle. Awesome.
Yeah. So they living in my position. They actually packed up and moved both the location selection.
Wow. No pun intended on that one. You packing company just, hey, we're out of here. See you later.
Exactly. So, yeah. So let's see. And then, so I didn't have a job. And I was like, this is a perfect time for me to take the Concrete Countertop Institute class. So that was 2019. I took the class. I don't want to say luck. And luck is not a thing because I believe in God and God's sovereign. So anyway, so the morning of the class, I'm like praying about, I'm like, what should I do with my life? Because I was the breadwinner, you know, of the family. And I was like, okay, please, God, just give me a sign. Give me a sign of what I'm supposed to do. And like I said, you know, my plan was I'm going to have slabs, stone fabricators are going to cut them. I walked out of my hotel room and tripped over a piece of concrete, that was like this big. I have it in my office. I was going to bring it. I forgot
that would have been amazing. Send me a picture of it. I'll post about it.
Okay, I will. So I tripped over this piece of concrete. I pick it up and I look at it, and it's like an inch thick, and it's literally a cut piece of glass fiber reinforced concrete. So that was like, that's my sign. Like literally, that's your sign. So I picked it up. I'm like, okay, this is great. The class that I took, Buddy Rhodes, like that was the first time he went to a concrete countertop institute class, like as a guest, basically. So Buddy Rhodes is basically like the grandfather. We call him like the grandfather of glass fiber reinforced concrete. And I was so stoked to meet him because, I knew about him and everything. Yeah, it was just amazing.
Is he from Minnesota or where's he from?
He's in like California. So he used to be a potter.
Okay.
He was a potter and he wanted to like make bigger things and he couldn't find the right medium and clay wasn't enough for him. And he basically like invented glass fiber reinforced concrete. It was just like great.
What makes, just because I don't know anything about it, why you say glass reinforced concrete? Why the word glasses keeps coming up to me? Like, why is that important?
So the difference between like traditional sidewalk concrete and glass fiber reinforced concrete is, well, for two things. So like sidewalk concrete, things like that, you want compressive strength. So that's why, people say, oh, I have 5,000 PSI concrete or I have 10,000 PSI, because that's how much they're basically like squishing it down, because that's what you care about in those applications. For applications like countertops and things like that, you care about flexural strength. So traditional sidewalk concrete has a lot of aggregate or big rocks in it, where typically glass fiber reinforced concrete, to get its strength and to get flexural strength, it's glass fibers. So like the glass fibers create all kinds of little bridges in it. And that's what gives it its flexural strength.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. That I knew there was a reason, and it kind of made sense that it would some sort of tie it together. One of the questions I'll have a little bit later when we get into the products is just describing some of the differences between the concrete. But anyway, back to Buddy Rose. So Buddy Rose is at this class, and was he teaching it, or you said he was attending?
He taught part of the class. So I actually ended up with like a box that he taught, and he teaches what we call press concrete. Because that was like basically Buddy Rhodes' technique, and it's a very unique look. You kind of like take a whole bunch of little balls of concrete and you press it all next to each other, and it creates voids in the concrete that you can fill in later with more concrete. So it gives a very unique textural look.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things that I'm blown away, and I don't know how not to go there right now, is like when I was looking, my assumption of concrete countertops, and as a builder of 20 years, you'd think I would know better, but I honestly don't have a lot of experience with it other than buying a few, from Pottery Barn or Restoration Hardware, 15, 20 years ago, which was, it's gray. I think we had one at our last house and it looked beautiful. But looking on your website, which again is gorgeous. Well done, Greta. But it was, the veining and I would have thought it was quartz. I mean, I was just blown away. I had no idea that you could do that kind of designs out of concrete. Is my perception pretty common, or am I just completely out of the touch on this kind of thing?
So the thing with that is taking the Concrete Countertop Institute, like I know concrete artisans everywhere, like in Europe, Japan, like all across the US, Boston, everywhere. I get to talk to all of the alumni members and even some people who aren't alumni, because we just have that bond and we're not competitors. It's like, whatever. So I see all of their stuff and we follow each other on Instagram. But honestly, there's only one other concrete artisan that I know of that does this same veining technique that I do.
In the world or in Minnesota?
That I've ever seen in the world.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And so like I came up with my technique on my own after honestly like 5 or 6 months of playing and getting frustrated and trying this and trying that and trying this. And finally I figured out, I'm like, this looks awesome. And then like months later, I saw someone else's like Instagram page and I'm like, that's the same technique. So I was like, I sent him a message and I'm like, hey, maybe like chit chat. And I asked her, I was like, what is your technique? I was like, cause I do the same thing. I just want to see, are you doing it the same way as I am? And so we were doing the exact same way, developed it completely separately on our own. And I've been asked by some of the guys that have been doing concrete countertops and stuff for like 25 years. How do you do that? And I'm like, I spent 6 months doing that. I'm not really just going to tell you how to do it.
Right. Is that a proprietary or a trademarkable thing that you can do so you could license it and sell it and like create an asset out of it?
Say maybe. I'm not really sure. I mean, I have a patent pending on a different, a process, so to speak. But I would probably say no. It's more like just a trade secret.
I see.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, trade secret, things like that, you could patent that. It's a trade secret.
I mean, but the thing with processes are getting harder to patent as well.
Yeah.
Like
I know nothing, to be fair, about patents. So whatever you say, I'll take as gospel in this case, because I'm guessing you looked into it.
Yeah, I absolutely did. Yeah. So
because how much of it is art? I think of you couldn't patent hey, I'm putting oil on a canvas, or that's artistic ability.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, how this process, are you the only one that can do this, or are there other people in your company that can do this?
I'm the only one who's done it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how big is your company?
It's just myself, and I have 2 part-time workers, and that's it.
Okay. Well, that would explain it. Now, part of it was a scale thing, because I'm like, how do you oversee this as kind of like the master chef of, how do you describe yourself? Do you describe yourself, what would be, you describe yourself if you were to say to somebody, especially the artistry side of it, how do you describe yourself?
I feel like I'm an engineer before I'm an artist.
Okay.
I wouldn't call myself an artist, because an artist to me comes up they have this idea in their head and they make it happen. Even though I do that, but more in an artsy way. I can look at something, I can look at 2 things and kind of mash them together and say, okay, this is the thing, Right. Or I can recreate things pretty easily. We did this really, really artistic kitchen, and she wanted a backsplash that was textural. She wanted a backsplash that had birch trees in it, and
literal birch trees, pieces of a birch tree.
No, concrete that looked like art that was birch trees.
Okay.
And we talked a lot about, okay, what, if this is birch trees, what do we want the top to be like? Because the backsplash was textural. And you don't want a kitchen countertop that's textural. So we came up with, okay, if this is, the sun and the birch trees are here, let's make, the flat top be basically the floor of the forest. So that's what it looks like, is the floor of the forest. And it does have some, no texture at all, completely smooth. It does have, fallen birch trees in it, if you will.
Wow.
Yeah,
so is this a screen printing you're putting on this?
No, I did it all by hand.
Oh my word. I want to see that. Okay. I'm going to have to go back, because I clearly didn't spend enough time looking at the pictures. I was too busy trying to find information about you that didn't exist. And I was like, now I want to go back and do a second look. That's amazing.
It's on my Instagram.
And I love how you describe yourself not as an artist, because what you're describing is to me, pure art.
But they gave me 8 pictures and said, can you make something like this?
Yeah, but are you etching it? Is it maybe it's a trade secret, but how does it get onto concrete? I'm so confused.
It is the concrete. So concrete can be pigmented. So I see.
Okay.
If I have bright red concrete or bright blue, it actually starts as white. Then we put dry pigments in it to make, and it's actually Buddy Rhodes pigments that we put in.
Oh my word. Full circle. So going back a little bit, we got lost a little bit, or I did, because I'm so curious about where this is going. But when you so you got fired, you started your job. Walk us through those early years of sort of a startup, because I love, a lot of entrepreneurs, you're either forced into it or you're led there. In this case, you're sort of both, because you're hey, when I have a lot of money, I'm going to start this. And now you're I don't know if you had a lot of money, but you're well, I don't have a job, so I guess I'm starting it.
Right.
What were those early years like, where you had already discovered how to do it on your own home? Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
And did you go find a client? Who were your first clients? Walk us through those early years. Because it's not actually been that long. It's only been 5 years.
Yes, exactly.
So walk us through the early years of sales and how you really found a market for this.
Yeah. So the first year, it was more I'm going to do a little bit and do a little bit, And I think I found a builder, and I was hey, I'll give you a free vanity if you put my vanity in your, he had a parade home. I honestly don't even remember who that builder was.
That's amazing.
And didn't really get anything from it. I created a website, and I was working on, when I was off from working, I actually bought a commercial building and flipped it. So I was remodeling, and I was just I have to stay busy. So let's see. So I was just making some random stuff, had my website. I was doing it kind of on the side. I actually went back to work for a different company as their director of engineering. So I was working full time again. And then I was just doing concrete on the side, basically. People would just find me from my website. And let's see, it'd be late 2020. So I was doing it in my garage. I didn't have a shop, but I have a 3-car garage, and I just took over my garage. In late 2020, I had a call from a contractor who was L. Kramer Builders. And he said, hey, can I send you, some plans? Can you give me a bid? I'm like, sure. He says Rudolph's house on the plans. And I'm like, okay. Like my oldest daughter, since she's handicapped, I have met Kyle Rudolph from he does a lot of philanthropy and things like that. Yeah. So I knew who he was and all of that. And I'm like, this house is huge. Like, is this Kyle Rudolph's house? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm not going to ask because I was like, I don't want to act weird about it, right? So I sent them the bid, and then a week later,
were they specifying? Did they have designer?
It was already specified as concrete.
Okay,
yeah.
But I mean, was it printed or just straight concrete?
Honestly, I didn't even know the color. I don't think when I bid it.
Okay,
yeah, and it was Henry Interiors, who I also work with now too. Yeah, and so I got to meet them from this. So yeah. I made Kyle Rudolph's countertops out of my garage, and I had 10 of my friends help me install it. And so it was a really big bar top that had a ledge on it, and then their really big island, and then 2 tops that were in front of his golf simulator. So the island was so massive. I was like, I don't even know how to flip this, and honestly, a lot of not just you have to understand the product and the material, you have to understand rigging and how do you flip things and, how do you move things because they're big and heavy. And
why do you need to flip it at all? To seal it or what?
So typically, I don't want to say always because they do cast some stuff upside down or right side up. So typically you cast it upside down so that you have a nice flat, smooth surface. So when you cast it upside down, you have to wet grind the back smooth and then you flip it over and wet grind the top usually.
Because you're letting gravity fill in all the voids of whatever mold you're creating, or? Well, I don't know enough about how you would actually. So you're building this in your shop and then transporting it to the house. I'm just curious. Are you creating a mold that this goes in, a template and so is gravity when it goes upside down? Is the whole point is that that gravity would help smooth out all the edges, or I don't understand the point of when you said it's smooth on one side and then you have to smooth it again.
So well, yeah, I mean, some people do what we call cream finish. So when it is cast upside down, you could just flip it over and that could be your finish.
Okay.
But that's what we call cream finish. The issue with cream finish is that it's fairly scratchable, so to speak. So usually we flip it over and then hone it to 200 grit. Or in the case of the pressed concrete, the Buddy Rhodes concrete, all of those voids will be there. And then when you flip it over, you're going to fill it in with more concrete, then wet grind it down again. So there's a lot of processing.
I really want to come watch this. That's what I want to see. I want to see. Hey, do you have any videos on YouTube?
I'm totally an Instagrammer. Everything on Instagram, I do usually, I do a lot of behind the scenes and talking and stuff like that.
All right, yeah. I'll have to spend more attention. I think I already follow you, but now I'm gonna have to zero in on because I can't wait to see how that. I also don't consider myself an artist, although I think you are one. Where I definitely don't think I am, and I just really love watching it. I have a buddy of mine, Drew Beeson. He does a lot of really beautiful art, acrylic and epoxy. And anytime I see anything art, it's I send it to my artist friends. Surely they must love this. Now you're going to be on my Instagram spam list every time I find some crazy, art piece. So, I love watching it happen. It's quite beautiful. Okay, so how did you figure out this rigging? 10 people. First of all, how did you get 10 people to This is not like you're moving into your house and hey, here's pizza and beers, because I'm pretty sure you don't want to do pizza and beer installs with your concrete countertop.
So I think it's kind of funny because, so we had to flip the island. So I had my neighbor who had a bobcat come over and flip it for me because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to flip this thing. So he came over and flipped it. Since I ride motorcycles, I have a lot of motorcycle friends, and usually they're younger, right? So, and I have a friend who owns a junk removal business and knew him from riding motorcycles. So I was like, hey, I need some help. So my motorcycle friends came.
This is amazing. Yeah. This was Henry Interiors and L. Kramer on the job site, and in comes I don't know what, not the Hells Angels, but my motorcycle game club coming in to work on wow. Clearly there's a flatbed truck, or there's a truck in here somewhere that you have to drive to get this stuff here.
So my friend who has the junk removal business, he had a box truck. So the first piece we did was the back bar piece, and it was like 12 feet long. I think it was like 2 inches thick. And then it also went up like another 4 like to 6 inches, the back ledge. Huge, heavy piece. And there was only, I think there's only 4 of us that time. So there's this bobcat that was there at the job site when we get there. And we're like, we try to get it out, and we're like, we don't know what we're doing really, And so my friend Eddie, it's Eddie's Junk Removal. He's like, maybe the keys are in the bobcat. He gets in the bobcat, keys are in it. He's like, we're going to make this work, right? And honestly, we're like borrowing, who knows, bobcat. Maybe it's your bobcat. I'm like, I don't even know whose bobcat this is.
We did do a remodel years later out next to Kyle's house.
Are you?
Yeah, no, we already did.
Oh,
yeah, it was
nice.
a small deal, but anyway, so I know exactly where you are. So anyway, that's kind of funny.
So we're like basically stealing this bobcat, and Kyle Rudolph comes out like on his balcony with like a couple of his friends, and I'm like, oh no. We're like, hi.
Hey, Kyle, can you help? You're really big and strong.
Yeah, I was like, okay, hopefully he just doesn't know it's our not our bobcat, whatever. So yeah, we get that in. And then we have the big island piece. And so like, I think it rained the day before, and we had to like back up my friend's truck and trailer. Like we could only get it halfway down because it's like a walkout. And so we all had to like walk, and we are like walking through the mud, like rocks sticking to our boots, and we laid all the like hardy board or whatever it's called down, but still it was just like a mess.
It was just a mud hole.
And we had 10 people carrying this island. We had to take 2 breaks because it was like,
what'd you rest it on? Did you bring some sawhorses or something to rest it on?
So we brought like foam and stuff. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, this sounds. Any idea how heavy it was?
That one I did like full. Like normally when I do 2-inch concrete, I foam core it. That one I did. I'm pretty sure I did full. So it was like 700 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like the bobcat idea.
Like that's almost the limit for a bobcat too. So, because I know we made a 900-pound double waterfall single piece island that was craned in, and I was like, okay, we're not carrying that in. That has to be craned in. So,
this episode is brought to you by Helmuth & Johnson, a top Minnesota law firm ranging from individuals to emerging startups to multinational Fortune 500 companies. Focusing on transactional law, litigation, and appeals, Helmuth & Johnson attorneys are leaders in their field. David Helmuth and Chad Johnson joined forces 30 years ago in 1994 with the goal of creating a premier law firm capable of handling complex and challenging cases efficiently and effectively. Today, Helmuth & Johnson rank among the top 15 largest law firms in Minnesota with more than 70 Twin City lawyers serving clients in more than 30 legal practice areas. They offer a full suite of legal services to clients without sacrificing their original commitment to providing responsive and affordable legal representation. To learn more, go to their website, www.hjlawfirm.com. This episode is brought to you by Adaptive, the software for builders that automates draws, budgets, and bookkeeping with AI. For over a year now, I've been partnered with Adaptive, and they've just been an amazing game changer in terms of efficiency in our time and all our bookkeeping. From the time we get an invoice, we import it into their system. The AI codes it, cost codes it, job codes it. All we have to do is review it, pass it through the people internally in the office, all digitally, and then it gets approved and paid all via ACH. It's becoming extremely fast and saving us countless hours a day and a week. When it comes to draws, all of our budgets now are set in Adaptive as well. So now when we cost code against the draws, we can do our change orders, and then with a click of a button, we can submit these draws to our title companies or to our homeowners for faster payment. If you're looking to save time, and if you're looking to be accurate, I highly recommend Adaptive. Additionally, if you'd like to listen to one of their founders share the story of Adaptive, you can listen to episode number 15 on the Curious Builder podcast. So you got it installed, and
it was
any issues when you got it installed, or it went pretty smoothly?
No, everything went really smooth. We did have to remake one piece because they didn't have quite the overhang right. They had like some like reclaimed barnwood or something, and I don't remember if they didn't have it on at the time or something, but yeah, it's just like no big deal.
Yeah.
Wow,
amazing. How right now, it seems like most of your work has been people reaching out to you directly. So in the beginning, it was mostly consumers. So it's obviously business to consumer. Now, what percentage of your business is, directly to, let's say interior designers, architects, or builders? So let's call it commercial or business grade versus directly to consumers. What would be your rough split?
So usually when concrete businesses start out, they are more homeowners than like designers or builders and stuff like that. And then you start to flip more towards like interior designers and things like that. I say I've definitely flipped that. So I'm probably like 70 or 80% interior designers and builders, so B2B, and then probably 20, 30% homeowners now. But I also now do have stone distributors. So I have 4 right now, about to be 5 stone distributors that basically I'm the manufacturer and they do the templating and install of my product.
Oh, that's pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just make it, they'll just give you an order and it's no different than you having a slab, right? So you've got a manufactured slab, the fabricator. I guess in this case, you kind of get a cut of both because you get to you're making it, and then they're obviously marking up. Are you handling any of the financial transactions with that consumer, or are you running it all through XYZ?
All through the distributors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
so I do have a utility patent, a patent pending on my process of being able to use a digital template from a stone fabricator, turning it into a finished product, and then sending it back to them, basically. So they're doing the templating, sending me the DXF. I'm creating the product with no waste. So we don't make slabs. We make everything to be specific for that size and that consumer, basically.
I mean, that is one of the things that seems kind of appealing about your business as I was kind of looking into it was, obviously, if it's natural stone, they're mining it out of, a stone quarry, they're cutting it, there's, waste, they're shipping it, there's all kinds of things that go into that, right? And then obviously if it's quartz, they're manufacturing it or cooking it or, that whole process, the recipe. Yes. But in your case, you're making it all out of product. I assume, is that probably one of the biggest, walk us through some of the differences. I assume those are your 3 biggest competitors. I mean, those are the 3 quartz, natural stone, and then concrete. Any idea what percentage of the market share would be? And we had Eric Tendler from Cambria on, and he was saying that roughly, at least today, it wasn't like this when 20 years ago, but today, quartz countertops is about 50% of the U.S. market. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on what is the split then, if that's true, for natural stone and, specialty. Do you consider concrete countertops a specialty product, or where would
absolutely specialty?
Okay. So what percentage of the market would be, quote, specialty?
I would think it's very small.
Okay.
Yeah. Because, we're such a niche market. And then it also varies like from business to business, like concrete business. Like I said, my technique is specific to me. If you ask some other artisan out there, to make it, they'd be like,
Be careful. You just describe yourself as an artisan. So you're going
artisan is different than artist. Craftsperson.
Yeah, don't worry. You're gonna be an artist by the time this show is over. Don't you worry. I'll get you there. Okay. So anyway, a very small percentage.
Very, very small. Yeah. And then even with concrete artisans, like we don't make just countertops. We make fireplace surrounds. We make wall panels. We make showers. We make shower panels. We make furniture. So there's a wide variety of other things that we do make.
It's coming back to me now because maybe you knew Morgan from before that because you're up in Monticello and she's in Elk River. And you didn't you do the fireplace surround at her artisan home?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's when I remember you asking me to stop by and look at it. I was there for her, kind of her grand opening event that she had. And I remember seeing you there and I remember being like, wow. Cause that was like that's gotta be like a 20, 30 foot tall wall.
Yes,
that was huge.
25 feet.
25 feet. Yeah. It was beautiful. And you had your cool, I remember being impressed because at the time, I think I even came over and talked to you because I said, I didn't know you could even do that with concrete.
I think I saw you at a Housing First. I think a Housing First event is when I first met you.
Oh, okay.
And you quizzed me. You were like, why should I pick concrete over, something else? And I think I mentioned something about fireplace surrounds because I was like, well,
Gave you the hook. Like, sell me now. That does sound like me. Here's the microphone. Here, quick, sell me. Why should I do that? Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Let's do it. Well, it's funny because the fireplace surrounds, it seems like a pretty emerging. Anyway, that's a whole nother thing. We'll stay on concrete here. What are you seeing? One of the questions that I had about concrete is, concrete is porous. Are you able to seal it? Walk us through a little bit of the sealing. Granted, natural stone is porous too, right? I mean, people need sometimes to forget that. When it stains, that's a porous stone, right? God made it with holes in it, walk us through concrete, like walk us through some of the pros and cons as people and even builders out there and designers that are listening to this episode, like, they might reconsider, what are some reasons to go to a specialty product, like a concrete countertop?
So because everything is made to order, and I always say you can get exactly what you want. You can get exactly the color that you want, the veining that you want, the technique that you want. You could tell me, I want a vein going this way, and then I want the backsplash vein to go that way, like exactly where you want it. I can do that. And then you can pick a color that you want. So you're not picking from, a pre-made set of slabs. You can get exactly what you want.
Okay. That's a pretty good reason.
Exactly. So, and so as far as concrete being porous and sealer, so it really depends on the artisan and what type of sealer they use. Since I'm an engineer, I spend a lot of time, paying attention, doing a lot of testing. So about a year and a half ago, I spent, I don't know, it probably took me about a month testing 7 or 8 different sealers, because there are a lot of different sealers out there. And it really depends on which sealer you use and how good it is. So that's why I always want to test my own products before I give them to someone else as well. So I use also from the Concrete Countertop Institute, I use a sealer that's water-based over solvent-based. There is a really good solvent-based sealer out there, but the thing I don't like about solvent-based is just the chemicals and the smell, and I'm really sensitive to bad smells, and I just didn't want solvent-based. So I tested it for 15 different staining agents, scratching, heat, and things like that. So, I have this monstrous spreadsheet because I'm also a mathematician. So I went through everything and I gave everything basically a weighting, okay, how much does it cost? Is it resealable? Is it, environmentally friendly? How scratchable is it? How did it do over all of these stains? How easy is it to strip it and reseal it? Can homeowners reseal this if they want? I went through just a huge list of different things to look at for each one of the sealers. And still stuck with, what I've been always using, which is Omega from Concrete Countertop Institute. So it does seal it. It makes it, basically it's a coating. So it's non-porous basically after that. But then if you scratch the coating, if you mess up the coating, then it can get into the concrete and then seep down into it, because like you said, concrete is porous. But there's other, like I said, there's a ton of different sealers out there. That's just the one that I use.
You have to do it repeatedly. I mean, is there ongoing maintenance with it?
So that's the nice thing about Omega. You don't have to reseal it unless you harm it in some way.
So it's self-sealing, or just it takes care of it the one time? It's kind of like a shell and it's done.
Yes, exactly. Okay. It's basically like a shell.
Interesting. On your website, the one that I was thinking of is that white countertop with those cool blue streaks, but where you poured the sink. Is that all one piece?
Yes.
Amazing. Because now where you're mentioning where the line comes, at kind of an odd angle, or not odd angle, but 20-degree angle, comes down the sink, through the sink and up. I can see why a designer, a homeowner, I mean, I don't know how you would, I don't know if you could do that with natural products.
Yeah, you couldn't, I don't think. And honestly, natural products are glued together. If you see something that has a 3-inch face, if you're using porcelain or something like that, it's glued together. And do you want something that's glued together?
Well, no, I assume the weight of it too. I assume when you're building it, the cabinet guide, the substrates, whether it's internal metal and iron, is that something you're providing, or that's something I assume the cabinet manufacturer is going to have to get pretty involved with? Because
no. So glass fiber reinforced concrete is lighter than any other stone out there.
Really?
Yeah.
So that giant slab you had that was 700 pounds was lighter than it would have been if it had been any other product?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So they must love it.
I mean, things are still heavy, but
I mean, if nothing else, you've made a sale, because next time I do a home, I am going to be trying to figure out a way to get this in, especially a show home, because I really want to put this in. This sounds really cool. Plus, now I want to go find out where some of your homes are, where I can go see it in person. Now I'm really curious. Walk us through a little bit about, so we talked obviously a lot about the product. Let's talk a little bit about the innovation. I mean, is there more things you want to talk about there? I mean, it sounds, obviously you've spent a ton of time. What I am sort of fascinated by is how, quote, playing with the product is really how it innovated. And it seems like you regardless if you listen to people talk about their careers, their craft, their art form, a lot of it is founded in play. And, having little kids, mine are probably younger than yours at this point, but like it's so much of it is the playfulness. So I love the idea that a lot of your company started with you just playing with it, and it just kind of kept evolving. And I love the idea that there's only 2 people in the world that do it your way. And it's sort of funny that how often do you guys chat now?
We don't actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Just, sometimes like when you talk to different artisans, sometimes you're like, oh, when I did the tall surround, I talked to Jay from Oasis in Boston. I said, because he did, several tall surrounds. I'm like, how do I get this up there? How do you do this? And Jay is, he's so funny. He goes, it's death from above. That's what he told me. I was like, death from above? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, everything you do to try to get this up there is sketchy. He's like, it doesn't matter what you do. It's sketchy. I'm like, well, you're so helpful.
Yeah,
like, don't terrify me. Right. So I'm sorry. I totally lost track of what you asked.
No. I mean, you kind of did, just the sense of play. I mean, it sounds like it's highly inventive. And, I think a lot of, especially the specialty items in a home, I think the figure it out factor is uber high with you.
Oh,
I mean, you can clearly tell as you talk about this, which I certainly appreciate. I think sometimes as we explain to our clients, I often say that, yes, we have a blueprint, we have specs, we are following this, but there is a lot of art in putting this together. And that's where you're hiring talented people, communication teams, all that stuff is super important. But, a lot of it comes down to, honestly, a little bit of elbow grease and some fortitude and, some pluck, because there are some things that just don't work. And, do you have people that are kind of willing to go, the extra mile? And honestly, a big part of my job as a custom home builder, is aligning myself with people that have similar values, knowing that I'm not an expert in countertops in any form. But one thing I'm intrigued about is like, okay, well, you are, hey, here's what we're doing. How, let's find ourselves a client and say, hey, how can we make something together? Because the story, in some ways, it sells itself. It's a little bit like, well, you were there when we had Jackson Schwartz talking about Hennepin made lights. And one of the things, like, you can buy a lot of light fixtures from a lot of places, but, each one of those has been touched by hand, and each one of those lights has been, formed. And there's something about it for me that is very organic. And maybe it's because I don't do it. I have such an appreciation and affinity for it. So now hearing you talk about concrete that way makes me feel like, oh, this is something that was shaped by hand that, was created for this home. That seems really unique. Like I'd be curious to know, like on a price point schedule, where does concrete countertops fall in the hierarchy of, let's say quartz and natural stone? I know there's a huge range here, so it's kind of a tough question maybe.
I'd say we're somewhere in the middle. We're higher than granite, could be usually less than high-end quartz, sometimes more than high-end quartz. But then it also depends on what product we're talking about. So if we're just talking about like straight countertops, right? But if we're talking about like fireplace surrounds or something like that, if you can't typically make comparable types of shapes out of stone, because you have to start with like this huge block where we're just going to make a mold and we can make it 1/2 inch thick, but it may look like it came out of a huge block.
Right.
So depending on, the product.
Flexibility of form is really its biggest asset. Is that true?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Because it's basically like liquid stone.
Right.
Yeah.
How often do you get people that are buying it? Because I'm guessing it's, especially in the day and age that we live in, where more and more people are becoming more eco-conscious, and for sure they are from a branding and business association. I would imagine, you're not freight and shipping and mining and all these. Is that a huge selling point, especially with, architects and designers that value those, and their clients that, let's say, go to them and say, hey, like, I'll just use, we had Sustainable Nine on. I don't know if you've ever worked with Chad or Ryan, but, they have a lot of their clientele is looking for, trying to get, let's say, pushing the envelope on a net zero home. And so they're looking at the VOCs in paint and the indoor air quality. Are those types of builders and the clientele that they attract more interested in a product in an art form like yours because it has a lower environmental impact? Is that a selling point, or am I wrong?
Oh, it's absolutely a selling point.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't say that's my typical selling point though. Typically my selling point is going to be color and shapes, that we can make things that you can't find anywhere else,
Because you can create them.
Exactly.
Right. how long? So I come to you and I say, like for instance, how long is your backlog? If I come to you and say, I want give me an 8x10 island. That's a dumb dimension. 5x10 island, and I want some crazy whatever. How long? Like, what was that process through? I'm going to give you a picture. I'm going to iterate it for you. You're going to how does the proof concept work? Like, are you giving me a digital proof? Like, how do you get clients to sign off on something like this?
So usually, that was why I created the visualizer. We actually created, I think it was like 10 different slabs of concrete, just so that we could take pictures of them and create the visualizer. And then we made all of these different colors so that we could create the visualizer. So typically I tell them, go look at the visualizer, pick something that you like for a color or a pattern, and then download the JPEG, send it to me. Once they do that, I send them, and then they give me like dimensions, where they're at, what are the logistics of the installation, stuff like that. Or I just send them to the distributor and say, okay, you handle this, which they'll ask the same questions and do the same things. But once they say, yep, your price is good, I'm going to sign your contract, here you go, then I make a sample of what they picked.
Okay.
Unless I already have a sample, of course.
Right. Is this where on your website you have 6 patterns, 51 colors, endless possibilities?
I mean, like, there's literally like an infinite amount of colors.
Because it was funny, especially because you said you're into math, because they're like, well, I'm pretty sure 6 times 51 is 306. But the whole point is, obviously, I get it. Like, the application of it is endless. So
it's actually not 306 or whatever you said. It's actually like a factor number. Sorry.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Yeah. Educate me more.
It would literally be like,
because it's a power.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's like lottery, so many, combinations.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. I didn't do that correctly. I like it. Infinite.
Sorry.
I was just trying to give you credit. Hey, no one is ever going to accuse me of a math. I was the presenter. I was not the math crusher. So I will definitely defer on that one. Let's talk a little bit more about from a business standpoint. Do you plan to scale? Do you plan to grow? Do you feel like you're kind of in a kind of a sweet spot? Like, where do you see, you've got a, pretty innovative design process. You've got these patents. You've got some really cool, not only tech going on in some of your patents and things like that, but where do you see the future? What does the next 5 years look like?
So adding more distributors is a big one. I was actually going to use your podcast, Mark, to announce this. Amazon.
Okay.
I have my own store on Amazon.
Oh, very cool.
So I haven't listed any products yet, but by the time this goes live, I better have some products up. My move, like, really, because that took like 2 weeks to move my entire shop, that threw my whole thing off. My goal was to hit your podcast date, to be able to say, okay, look at my Amazon store. But Amazon is a big one for me. Yeah.
That's amazing. Good for you. Congratulations. How will that, so you'll have set patterns and set dimensions and people will just order, or is it to suit, or like how does that, what does that portal look like?
So it will be more standardized. I'm going to have basically 3 fireplace surrounds, but they're kind of a mix and match design, and 5 colors. And then I'm also working on some collabs with interior designers to work on vanities as well. Vanity tops.
That's amazing. Have you worked at all with Katie Kath?
No.
So they might be worth talking to a little bit. Katie was on the podcast, her and Jesse, maybe a year ago, and they had just launched they did a vanity line online. So they have a cabinet shop,
yeah.
And she might be a good person to network and talk with in terms of, what have they found successful? What didn't? I know it was a little slow in the beginning, but then it really took off, where I think they had I think for them, hey, we have all this capacity, anytime our cabinet shop is sitting idle, let's make a couple more cabinets or vanities of set dimensions. Yeah. And then let's have a catalog shop and sell them. And so they went through a whole branding suite and they built it all out. But anyway, just putting you in touch, plus another local Minnesotan Katie's a fantastic business person as well. So might be a good resource. Well, that's really exciting. I'm excited about that. How, in terms of, because it's funny now, it's like the competition side of me is like, well, I want I want my own custom Mark Williams line of a countertop. Maybe we'll have to do a curious. Actually, here's my idea. Could you make me a Curious Builder countertop with like the logo in the countertop?
Yes.
No way.
Oh yeah, we've done logos.
What would that cost? Like, this is probably what.
Do you want it to be yellow?
Yeah. I want it to be this guy, or yeah. And maybe the logo, the print around
really
it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would that work?
You just have to tell me dimensions and how thick, and yeah.
Oh yeah, we're definitely going to do that. That's my first collab. See, there you go.
Yeah, we've done several logos. We did. We're about to do one with Republic Services, the trash company.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to make a couple of vanities for them. We're making Rudy Gobert's logo too.
Okay.
Like he wants his sign. Yeah, that's actually sitting on my casting table right now.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh yeah, I'm all over this.
We did Willie McCoy's. We did their Willie's on the Water logo.
Sure. Yeah, I saw that on your website.
Yeah.
That was really, really neat. Well, I think there's so many applications for the custom, especially for branding.
Yes.
That would be a really have you thought about target marketing for, kind of the branding aspect?
I'm still learning marketing.
Well, I'm just like, I'm
geeking
out about this right now. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I see some huge market potential on that.
Yeah.
What, how often okay, so I'll go back to the original question. So the scale, obviously you've got Amazon. Are you going to have to hire more people, or are you going to teach more people your process so it's not tied to just you?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what does that process look like?
I'm not so because we can make reusable molds. So it's going to be basically, me teaching someone. Yeah. I'm not really that worried about it because since I've had other people work for me before, I feel like I'm a pretty good, and actually some of the people that used to work for me would love to come and work for me if I could afford to hire them too.
Right.
So that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is amazing. Are you, in terms, I assume the overhead, you have a shop now, or where do you, is it? Okay. So are you able to, from just running it from a cash flow standpoint, you would take a quarter, 50% down? Like how are you taking in receipts and then, just being paid upon delivery and completion? Is that typically how it works?
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. 50% down and then final on delivery.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as for the rest of the countertop world too. I was just curious if it's any difference with you.
I mean, working with some of the bigger builders though, usually you have to go with their terms, which is like 30 days after.
Right. So. I mean, they'll put it on a draw, it'll go through a bank or however they plan on doing it. That's amazing. I
should tell you, so being innovative, I am always playing. And I have this huge list of things I want to make all the time. I just came up with another one a couple days ago and I'm like, okay, I want to make it now, but sometimes you have to okay, calm down. You have to finish your customer stuff so you can try something else. And there's a million, you can infuse concrete with things too. So I was
smells.
Infuse
it with rosemary or infuse it with lavender. Be like, scratch and sniff pool. So you can really drown people. You'd be like, actually, this is not a joke. Swim to the bottom of your pool, scratch it. That was a classic blonde joke back in high school.
That's funny. There's I don't know if it's a TikTok video or what it is, but there's a spoof kind of goofy video about concrete and it says it smells like butterscotch. And I'm like, what? So that's I have to send it to you. It's a hilarious video. Anyway, but just different things you can do with concrete. You can infuse it with things as well. So anyway, being innovative. So I don't think not saying that someone else hasn't done this, but we made a 5x10 slab that was a 1/4 inch thick. And it's super flexible. I honestly haven't seen anyone else make concrete that big and that thin. But it's
what was the application? Was that for a fireplace surround or
shower panels?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because when you compare to porcelain is very brittle or it can break, the shower panels that we just did, actually, the builder told me that they had done porcelain before. He said he had 8 slabs break. And I'm like,
I remember talking, we had a client one time where I've only done it twice, and the, big 8-9 foot panels are huge, beautiful. And the homeowner told my fabricator, she said, well, the labor must be so much cheaper because you're only putting in 3. And we got a good laugh out of that. And we're like, yeah, there's a lot less grout lines, but you have to factor in waste. If this breaks, yes, I have to go get another one. I'm not charging you more. It broke. Right. And so that's kind of all factored into sort of the waste factor. Plus, I think a lot of people, especially consumers, think that, even if your concrete is porous or with this, whatever sealer, I forgot the name of it now again, that you're putting on it, the real waterproofing of a shower is actually the waterproofing behind it. So it doesn't matter if it's technically, waterproof, if you will, or water, it pours anyway. And so I think we see so many more of these panels happening, and as you already say, I love the idea that the customization of it. I could see a huge application for a Lifetime Fitness or, some commercial applications. Like I love logos and branding. So I'm just thinking about like, just branding or like, rather than like, this is super tacky, but it's like, at the Super Bowl, like there'd be like, branded porta potties or like whatever. You could like, you could do a fundraiser and like, you could brand this shower at like a public facility or something like that. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely could. And then like, so the shower that we're not quite finished. We have to caulk it, but it's mostly done. But the shower niche it's built in. So it's all like one piece too.
So I actually, it's funny. I just saw something. It's funny how Instagram changes. There's so many impressions that you get to see. So you get exposed to so many more things. How plaster, I assume you can do a plaster shower as well.
So plaster, and I think that's interesting. So I have been asked, because I do know how to do plaster and micro cement. So I always try to say micro cement's better. Micro cement looks like plaster in a way. But plaster, you're probably thinking of like Tadillac or a waterproof plaster, but that typically needs to be resealed several times. The other difference between like concrete and plaster is like plaster or even micro cement, it's not structural, where concrete is structural.
And why would that matter?
Well, in certain applications, it may not, but in some it does.
Okay, I'm thinking of a shower because I'm like, well, I don't think.
For in a shower, it probably wouldn't. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I understand your point, though.
Yeah, but I would still lean more towards micro cement, which is also an application, like it's applied on. But micro cement is typically it's stronger than plaster, and you shouldn't have to like reseal it and things like that.
How often do you get people and other artisans or other concrete companies that are either want to come work for you or see your product and are really impressed and be like, we want to come work with you? Do you get people that reach out to you and say, hey, we'd love to come join your team? Or is that?
That's funny. I had a couple that just came. They literally just left today. They took 3 concrete countertop institute classes and they didn't feel comfortable enough to make their own vanity. So they asked me if they could come to my shop and basically make it in my shop.
Yeah.
So they came. I also have someone, I guess he's from India. He wants to visit me soon. And he's like, I want to come learn from you. I'm like, you can come visit me if you want. So he's coming the end of this month for like 3 days.
Interesting. Now, will you charge for that?
No.
Only from you have a very unique set of skills.
I always tell them, if you're going to come to my shop, the only thing I won't teach you is my veining technique. Right. Like I'll teach you anything else you want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've visited other people's shops just to like stop and say, hey, how's it going? Right. So.
Interesting. I mean, just because you're very personable and you have a great skill set, I mean, it might be, and only if you like to do it. I only have found that recently I really enjoy getting people together. I don't feel like I personally have a lot to educate people on, but I love education. And I love the idea that just by getting people together, talking about what we're doing and, even it's almost like a shadow. I have someone, I'm going to start doing it on a more regular basis, like local trade schools and things like that, where I'm reaching out to them and just say, hey, come shadow me for the day. And they're young kids, right? So I don't expect them to pay, but I think there might be a profit model, for you even where you could say, hey, you'll take on an apprentice. You'll be like an old sword master from Kyoto, Japan here. You'd be trading your secrets. So
yeah, I don't know if I don't know if I want to be a teacher. I don't really, that's not my thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I love to invite people to come to my shop and make something with me. I'm constantly like, hey, if you're an interior designer, come visit me because we can make a mirror together. Cause I've been making these cute little, like, I call them concrete blobs, basically. We like make a concrete blob and we end up putting a mirror in it and it looks very organic and cool, know, but it's super easy for me to just show someone how to do it. And then they kind of like, if they're doing it, then it's their own personal thing. I've had other people, Bonnie Caspel, from Casa. I'm skipping. She's going to have a remodeled home in the June Artisan Tour. And we did her fireplace surround, but she was very specific she wanted it to look more like polished concrete. So we put aggregates in it so that it could be polished and exposed in some areas. So I invited Bonnie. I'm like, hey, this is yours. If you really want to come and you can grind where you want to see the rocks. So she came, she like got her gear on and she like ground out. Like she came like 2 or 3 times. And then I had another couple, I'm like, hey, if you want to come to the shop, because they wanted a very specific blue. And I'm like, we'll just mix it until we get the right blue. Because it was just like in a small area. And I was like, we'll get the right blue and then you guys can like put it where you want it. So they came to the shop and did that. Cause I like people to have at least a good feel for like, if they want something specific, let's do it together. And if you want like a personal touch to it, that you can say, we actually poured this or we actually helped. I think that's like a big selling point too, you know?
Huge. I mean, a story point. I mean, the one that you've kind of one up Jackson, he doesn't let other people, blow their own glass for their own home. True. Where in your case, that is amazing.
I'm very open to it because I love concrete. I think it's fun. I do love teaching people to a certain point, let's say. I don't want to teach someone how to do like start to finish a mold because that takes a lot of time. But like I'll have everything set up and then we can do it together.
Man, I'm thinking like, I do like the teaching aspect. If I had your skills, something like, you could have like, kids, you could have adults. I mean, there's so many applications where I think, this would have mass potential. I'm not saying you should do it because it doesn't sound like you're interested, but I'm just thinking of like, man, for me, I'm like, I would love to bring my kids up for a day and just pour countertops, and like kids just love, and my daughter just turned 8. And so it's like the thing that they love to do the most right now is arts and crafts. And, they're just, everything is very hands-on. And I feel like a lot of, especially the youth, I hope, we can redirect a lot of them back into doing things with their hands. And I know a lot of parents, have the guilt complex of screen time and all this stuff that we're going to have to deal with. And, that we didn't have to deal with when we were kids. You're out riding motorcycles and dirt bikes and, and you still are. So good for you. Now you're kind of, as we close here, like, do your daughters have any interest in the business or what, like, how old are they now?
Absolutely not. They don't want anything to do with concrete. I tried to get my youngest. So I have an 18 and 20-year-old. I tried to get my youngest when she was like 12. I'm like, do you want a dirt bike? Trying to get her into, no, she didn't even want to. I'm like, what 12-year-old does not want a dirt bike? I'm like, are you crazy? Right. She's like, no, Mom, that's a boy thing. I'm like, no, I have a motorcycle. It's not a boy thing. What are you talking about? Also, so I did go to this Stillwater High School and I helped them build a coffee table out of concrete. Oh, so I have done that too. Yeah.
That's amazing. Fun. Yeah. So the girls have no interest. All right. Well,
it's okay.
Oh, for sure.
You gotta let your kids know, like,
you gotta find the passion. So, no, I mean, I've mentioned many times in the podcast, like, I kind of hope my kids don't have an interest in building, but now as I get older, I'm like, it would be kind of fun to work with, if they have a passion in it. So,
right.
I mean, frankly, it's like whatever people are passionate about, that's what's exciting. And it kind of radiates out of you, your passion. So I'm really excited to see it. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Maybe as we wrap it up, why don't we give just two little personal things? Like, what are some, like, from a learning standpoint, I always like to ask people, like, how do you self-educate, or what are your inspirations as you look out?
Let's see. I look at a lot of art. I do look at art, not being an artist. And I have invited other artists. I've actually had Richard Merchant, I think his name. I don't know if I'm saying his last name right. He's a sculptor. He came and made a piece out of concrete with me. Because, it's like, I do like to invite people to come and make stuff. So yeah, like, that's an inspiration. Just looking at, I really like to like cross industries and say, what out of this industry can I use in my industry?
I think that's really smart.
And I've felt like that also, like, when I was an engineer, or, different things, it's like, can healthcare learn from, automotive engineering? Can automotive engineering learn from healthcare? Things like that, especially even like when you're running a business. So like, I was originally an automotive engineer, and automotive engineering, they have so many great processes and business practices and things like that like no other industry has. And, that's why it takes like 4 years to launch a car usually, is because, well, not just like all of the practices, but also, regulations, whatever. But like, they have so many different things that they go through. Like, is it going to have buzz, squeak, or rattle? And they do all of the testing for that. Or does it have enough lighting? Is there enough lux? All of those things, all of those little details, I think, just being able to cross and like look at other industries and other, products and cross it over and say, how can I use that in this?
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much. And we'll have everything tagged in the show notes, and Neon Lion will help us push it out as well. Yeah, we will look forward to seeing Amazon being released in a short order. Yes. And we'll go from there. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you having me.
We're excited to announce that our first live event is now on sale on our website. On May 16th at 5 o'clock in the North House in Minneapolis, the Curious Builder is going to be hosting Brad Levitt, Nick Schiffer, Tyler Grace and Morgan Molitor to a panel discussion about networking, marketing your brand and your business, and all things related to the Contractor Coalition, which is coming to Minneapolis on May 15th through May 19th. If you're looking at leveling up your business, I'd highly recommend attending. For those local here in Minnesota, it's right in your backyard. This would be an amazing time to network with some of the nation's best builders with the best building practices around. Join us for the Contractor Coalition, or if you just want to be there for one night and enjoy the networking and meet these superstars from around the country, again, that is going to be May 16th at 5 o'clock at the North House. Tickets can be bought at the contractorcoalitionsummit.com, as well as the CuriousBuilderPodcast.com. The Curious Builder is proud to announce that on our website, we now have a shop or a merch page. If you want to support the show, it really makes a big difference. A lot of people over the years have asked, how can we support your show? We really appreciate the content. So head to the CuriousBuilderPodcast.com, go to the shop page, and right now the shirts will be on sale for pre-order until May 1st. It's the only time we're going to do it. So if you want your limited edition shirt, head there now, and we appreciate the support. Thanks for listening to the Curious Builder Podcast. If you like what you listen to, please give us a 5-star rating and write us a review. It really means a lot. It's a great way for us to just understand what you like about the podcast and what we can keep doing. So like and review, and please share with your friends and family. Find out more at CuriousBuilderPodcast.com.